1936 and King George V is dead. Well, almost. He was dying. In fact, he was actually taking a bit too long to die, and so his doctor was sure to inject him with lethal amounts of both cocaine and morphine. The reason why this was done was so that the king's death could be announced in the much more respectable morning papers instead of the evening ones. He was succeeded by his eldest son, Edward, who became Edward VIII. Edward's ascension to the throne wasn't actually guaranteed. His father had reservations about him and hoped that he would abdicate the right to succeed in favour of his brother, Prince Albert. The reason why was that Edward was a fairly scandalous chap who refused to settle down and kept having affairs with married women, such as a certain Wallis Simpson. So, upon taking the throne, Edward tried to be a good monarch and he poured a lot of effort into the governing of the United Kingdom and the British Empire. The problem he had was that he was extremely opinionated and kings are supposed to be neutral. For example, when Germany illegally remilitarised the Rhineland against the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, the British government condemned the action. Edward promptly lambasted the government for doing so because he liked Germany. And Hitler. The government could put up with a nosy king, but in November of 1936, Edward declared that he was going to marry Simpson. This was a big no-no. Why? Well, the first reason was obvious, she was still married. The second was that even if she did get a divorce, the Church of England didn't allow people to remarry if their ex-spouses were alive. The fact that Simpson had already been divorced once before by this point also made people worried that she was only interested in the king's money or his titles. Stanley Baldwin, the Prime Minister, urged the king to ditch Simpson before his reputation and that of the monarchy was damaged. You see, the press had been quiet about Edward's affair with Simpson for the first 10 months of his reign, largely out of respect and to prevent embarrassment, but overseas it was common knowledge. Edward reluctantly tried for a compromise, a morganatic marriage. This would mean that if they were to be married, Simpson wouldn't become queen and any children that they had wouldn't be entitled to succeed the throne. In late November of 1936, Baldwin and the rest of the government refused to support any kind of marriage. It was clear that there would be no compromise and two sides formed. Those dedicated to keeping Simpson off the throne, led by Baldwin and Cosmo Gordon Lang, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and those who wanted him to stay, known as the King's Party. This included members such as Winston Churchill, the former Liberal Prime Minister David Lloyd George, and Oswald Mosley, the leader of the British Union of Fascists. In terms of public opinion, many were actually very sympathetic to the king, but Simpson wasn't very popular and many didn't want an American on the throne. The efforts of the king and his supporters came to nothing, and so Edward opted to abdicate, which he did on December the 10th, 1936. The throne passed to his brother, Albert, who became King George VI. Edward was made the Duke of Windsor and married Simpson in 1937, and they stayed together until Edward's death in 1972.